Today we are going to talk about Japan's public finance. First and foremost, we need to understand the concept of public finance first. The concept of public finance consists of two things. The first one is government revenue and the second one is government expenditure. The government revenue is the money that was collected by the government from various sources, such as tax on levied incomes, wealth accumulation of individuals, non-tax revenue such as fees and penalties, and non-revenue receipts. In April 2021, Japan's government revenue is estimated to be around 57.4 trillion yen according to the fiscal year 2021 general account budget, which features 80.67 trillion for income tax, 8.99 trillion for corporation tax, 20.28 trillion for consumption tax, and 9.5 trillion yen for the others. Next, we have the government expenditure, which is divided into two categories, mainly known as operating expenditure, which is works for maintaining government services, facilities, and its department. And the second one is development expenditure, which is meant to support the government projects to boost up economic growth. In April 2021, Japan's government will increase to 106.6 trillion yen according to the fiscal year 2021's general budget, which features 35.84 trillion yen for social security, 6.07 trillion for public works, 5.32 trillion yen for national defenses, and 5 trillion in emergency spending related to the COVID-19 pandemic, and 9.27 trillion for the others.
A main source of government revenue is taxes. However, the government also receives revenue from other sources besides tax. There are three types of conventional government revenue, which is tax revenue, non-tax revenue, and non-revenue receipts. The income that governments get through taxing is referred to as tax revenue. The main source of government revenue are taxation. For instance, income tax, social contributions, and sales tax. The government revenue that is not generated from taxes is referred to as non-tax revenue. For example, regulation fee and permits, services fees, sales of goods, and more. Non-revenue receipt consists mainly repayments and reimbursement as well as contributions from government expenditure and etc. As for Japan, the main government revenue are from tax revenue. Tax revenue for Japan in 2019 is 60.35 trillion yen, which includes 55.95% of personal income tax rates, 30.68% of social security rates, 30.62% of corporate rate tax, 15.90% of social security rates for employees, 15.49% of social security rates for companies, and 10% of sales tax rates. Non-tax revenue for Japan in 2017 was 927,077 yen, which includes 2.570% of property income, 6.57% of sales and goods and services, and 47.4% of other contributions.
Today I'm going to talk about the types of government expenditure in Japan. So there are two types of government expenditure. The first one is operating expenditure, which is the expenses of operating and administrating a government department. The second expenditure is development expenditure, which is the expenditure for investing purposes to improve facilities in the basic physical infrastructure. Operating expenditure refers to expenditure of various government departments necessary to maintain their services, for example, salaries for civil servants, debts, supplies, and services. Development expenditure refers to expenditure related to projects that boost economic growth or strengthen the production capacity of the economy. For example, security sector, social services, and economic sector. The government spending in Japan are averaged over 80 billion Japanese yen from 1980 to 2021. Reaching an all-time high of over 100 billion Japanese yen in the fourth quarter of 2020 and a record low of over 40 billion Japanese yen in the first quarter of 1980. The graph shows the composition of revenue and expenditure of general account budget in 2019. So the budget in 2019 worth 99 trillion yen. 76.4% of it goes to primary expenses and 23.6% goes to national debt. And most of the budget are gets from the tax and stamp revenues, which is for 62.9%.
There are three types of tax structure, which are progressive tax, proportion tax, and regressive tax. A progressive tax is a tax where the tax rate increases as your income increases. A proportion tax is a tax where the tax rate remains constant as your income increases, while a regressive tax is a tax where the tax rate decreases as your income increases. If you are living in Japan, the basic taxes that you need to pay is income tax, resident tax, and social insurance. The tax rate of an individual's income in 2020 is between 5% to 45%. There are reduced rates of tax for a certain income earners. The number changes depending on the age, the annual income, deduction rate, and so on. Also, the calculation system may change over time. These are the tax rates of each tax base in yen currency.
Now I will go through about the government budget of Japan. Under this topic, I have learned that there are three types of government budget, which are balanced budget, surplus budget, and deficit budget. Japan's government ratified the budget for the year 2020 with a deficit equal to 10.3%, which means that the country expenses is exceeding the revenue during that year. For the previous year, Japan reached 3.1% of gross domestic product for the complete year. Japan government debt is at 266.2% of the country's gross domestic product in 2020, and the data also reached at the highest ratio of the government debt during that year. Meanwhile, in the previous year, the ratio of 238% is achieved by Japan for the government debt. This shows that Japan can repay its debt by issuing national bond and economic policy, but the debt is actually repaid and the amount of bond issue continue to grow.
Japan is one of the fastest countries to recover from recession. I'm going to talk about the fiscal policy that the government used in Japan. As we can see, Japan's GDP growth rate started to shrink in the fourth quarter of 2019. This is where the pandemic started. It then continued to shrink, then reached its peak in the second quarter of 2020 with a growth rate of negative 10.3%. Now, based on the GDP growth rate, we can see that Japan is in recession. Their government made an expansionary fiscal policy to overcome this problem. Theoretically, expansionary fiscal policy is where the government lowered the taxes and increased their spending. In March 2020, Prime Minister of Japan, Shinzo Abe, told that the Cabinet of Japan will look into a wide range of options on tax, fiscal policy, and deregulation in order to battle the damage from this pandemic outbreak. Then, in June 2020, Japan's government made a stimulus on tax such as tax refund, tax reduction for capital investments, and local tax relief, which includes reduction of property tax. Additionally, we can see that Japan's government spending increased highly from third quarter to fourth quarter of 2020. After all this expansionary fiscal policy has implemented, in the end of 2020, Japan has officially exited their recession. In conclusion, Japan's government is very concerned about their country and their people. They made such good work to overcome this crisis.